Robert Plank Show, episode 337, Flipped Lifestyle. Build an online passive income without sacrificing marriage or family with Shane and Jocelyn Sams. Hey everyone, and thanks for listening. We're talking right now with Shane and Jocelyn Sams, and they are the dynamic duo behind FlippedLifestyle.com. They're former school teachers, and after years of bad bosses, job losses, and frustration at work, they started an online business. And that business made it possible for them to quit their jobs, spend more time with their family, and earn millions in passive income online, all while working only 10 to 15 hours per week. And now they're helping other families do the same by connecting with people through their Flipped Lifestyle podcast website and inside their Flip Your Life community. So hey, Shane and Jocelyn, how are things?
Hey, thanks so much for having us, Robert. We're very excited to be here today.
Yeah, man, we really appreciate you having us as guests on your show.
I like having both of you on as my guests. So can you kind of tell me in your own words, what are you two all about? What are you guys up to?
Right now our main focus is definitely flipped lifestyle, where we're helping other families that were in our situation kind of flip their life upside down, start an online business, make that extra money. We really focus on families with kids, especially with small children, because, 5 years ago, we were that exact family. We had two babies. We were working full-time jobs. Like you said, we were both school teachers, working that full-time life, man, living that normal, American 2 cars, 2.2 kids kind of deal. And life was kind of good enough. But then once we kind of had those bad experiences at work and it kind of pushed us to look for something else, online business just changed everything. It opened up a world that we didn't even know existed. And we're trying to kind of be that evangelist now and go back and tell people, hey, there are alternatives than what you're doing now. You don't have to deal with this stuff. So that's kind of what we're all about, man, is just helping families and growing our online business.
Super cool, and you guys are based in Kentucky, and what I like about sort of this whole thing is, I'm sure that you guys hear all the usual excuses, right? Like, oh, I live here, but I can't do it, or like, oh, I have a kid, and I'm thinking, well, what about these people who have like multiple kids, or who have like teenage kids who are it sounds like even more work, and so it's like what's great about this is I think a lot of people out there, they either like say that they've waited too long, or they use like their kids or family almost like as an excuse, or they're like, I need that job security or have all these expenses. And so do you have sort of an answer to that? Or when someone kind of piles all those things on, what's your solution?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is a problem that we hear all the time. It's a problem that we had as well. And, I don't want to say that my kids are a problem, but when it comes to wanting to start a business, then time is always a problem. And we've heard this time and time again, but some of our more successful people have had a lot of kids. We have one person in our community, her name's Jeanette, and she has 6 kids, and she started an online business and then quit her job. So it's pretty awesome that, somebody can do that and have that many children and make it work. And for us, we only had 2 kids, but the thing that we always go back to is that every person on earth has 168 hours in their week. That's 24 hours times 7 days a week. And you just have to find a way to make it work. Like, it's not easy. Everybody wants to wave their magic wand or take their magic pill and make everything work out. And that's not the way that it works.
Yeah, and that's kind of where we kind of fall into in that coaching space. Is we've been there. I was working as a full-time teacher. I was coaching football, which is like another 40-hour a week job stacked on top of what you're already doing. Jocelyn was an elementary school librarian. She was working full-time. She'd have to stay at the library till 5, 6 o'clock, shelving books and getting everything ready for the next day. So we were very time crunched when we started off. And those were the initial obstacles that we had to overcome. How do you make time for your family? How do you take care of your kids and find those extra 2 hours a night to, hustle and work on your online business? Where do you find the money when you're making a teacher's salary and, you're living paycheck to paycheck? So those are the things that we had to overcome. And you said something like people say they waited too late. I'm 39 years old. We just started a few years ago. So it's never too late. You do have enough time, and there are ways to get the resources if you're resourceful to start an online business and go to the next level.
And so, what does that mean exactly? Being resourceful? Because I've just kind of sort of like talking about that whole idea of like people say that all these things kind of take up all my time. The thing that I've sort of heard as far as like I don't know anything about raising kids, but I know like people who their first kid they were super disorganized and sort of had like a terrible time, and then by the time the second kid came around, it's almost like it was like something had to give and they became like more organized. And the thing I heard was that it's uh it's simple but it's hard, right? So by
Sure.
simple they mean like simple not difficult, but then hard like hard not easy. So it's like a lot of sort of legwork needs to go into it, but if it's sort of like better organization, better time management, then you can kind of get the most out of that day. And so is that sort of the same for you guys? Like is it just like sort of a organization time management issue?
Well, we go back to this. There's two ways to really tell somebody's priorities in their life. You can look at their calendar and you can look at their checkbook. Because the way you spend your money and the way you spend your time is exactly what you're prioritizing in your life. And what goes out of that checkbook first or what goes onto that calendar first is actually your real priority list. So when we said, hey, we want out of what we're doing now, we have to make this online business thing a priority. And we have to also make our kids a priority. We have to make each other a priority. But we have to take care of those non-negotiables. We got to go to work because we got to eat and stay dry, warm, and fed, right? Then we started saying what goes on the calendar first after the non-negotiables: sleep, food, job. The kids, we put an hour in a day for kids. The work, we each got 2 hours on our online business. And if we ran out of time for things like TV and stuff like that, that's just the way it is because that was not our priority. And we had to make tons of sacrifices to make this online business happen.
And so, what does that look like? Do you guys have like some sort of like a shared calendar, or how do you make sure that the things you make time for actually you find the time for them?
So the very first time that we did this, we call it the 168-hour calendar. We actually hand drew this thing on a huge piece of paper, like a big, like accounting notebook. So I drew 168 squares or rectangles on this huge piece of paper, and we just started hand filling them in. And so that's what we tell our people who are part of our community to do now is we start there. Now, do we actually do that every week now? No, we now use like a Google Calendar that we share together now. But when we first started out, we actually hand wrote it on a piece of paper.
Yeah, when you write something down, you feel it. You know what I mean?
Oh
So when
yeah.
you start saying, when you start looking at that 168 grid, square grid, and you say, okay, I have to sleep X hours a day, and you color those in with black because they're sleeps. And then you say, I have to eat 3 times a day. So you color those 30-minute grids in, and you say, I have to go to work from 9 to 5. You color that yellow or whatever. All of a sudden, when the non-negotiables are on the board, okay, you say, what's next? Then you say, my kids. I'm going to put an hour in a day for my kids. I have to focus even when I'm hustling, even when I'm grinded, even when I'm trying to give them a better life. What's next? Well, we have to work on our online business 2 hours a day each. So I'll do these 2 hours while Jocelyn is with the kids these 2 hours. So maybe that overlaps, right? Because she might be spending her hour with the kids while I'm doing an hour of work. But then we would flip, and then she would work an hour, and I would spend an hour with the kids or something like that. So when you're looking through all those things, you're going to run out of squares. The problem with most people is they run out of squares because they said, oh man, I got to catch up on Walking Dead. And they watch 4 episodes. And I'm not saying that those things are bad. I'm just saying if you want to go to the next level and whatever you want to accomplish, you are going to have to make sacrifices for a time until you get to a point where you can do all the things that you want to do. One of the things that we did, especially like for money, was we sold our house. When we realized that online business worked, we said, how can we find the money? We had no money in our budget, man. We lived paycheck to paycheck. And there was times on Thursday you were going to the grocery store with a credit card and paying it off on Friday, because you ran out a day early. So we said, how do we free up extra money? There's only one way to do it. We have to get rid of something. So what do we get rid of? Our mortgage. We went and sold our house, bought one that was half the size, moved into it, and that freed up a few hundred extra dollars to invest back in our business. And usually people aren't willing to make those time sacrifices or those money sacrifices to get to the next level. But the people that do always win every time. When we see people sacrifice like that, when we see people take control of their calendar, they make it to the next level.
And it sounds like that whole like writing down, or like, having all those 168 hours sort of in a map and filling it in, sort of like helps to hit that point home. And what I'm sort of hearing is that, like you said, like watching TV in and of itself is not bad, but if you just kind of drift through life and sort of your free time kind of ends up controlling you, then that's just, you're just going to end up sort of just kind of in mediocre land, not really heading somewhere. And so it sounds like by sort of knowing how you're going to spend the day, and knowing like if you have free time, or if one of you has free time, or you switch, knowing what to put into it and sort of being intentional about that sounds like an easy way for the day not to just kind of eat up the time. And you've been mentioning a few times that there's this thing called the flipped lifestyle. So I'm what is that exactly?
So the flip lifestyle basically means that we prioritize our family over other things. So in our life, the way it is now, we talked about before we had to make a lot of sacrifices, and, some of that does come in to spending quality time with our families and a lot of other things. But now that we have built that up, now we're able to prioritize our family first. So now on our calendar, instead of putting work first, we put our family stuff first.
And that's what we mean by flip your life. We want to get people to the point where they have control of their time and their money, so that they can start saying, hey, I can prioritize the things that really make a difference. But we always stress to people, you can do this from day one. You don't have to follow the mentality of, oh, I've got to work 90 hours a week. I got to hustle to be successful for the rest of my life, and I got to put business before everything else. Like, even from day one, when we sat down and did that 168, square grid, we said, okay, the first thing that goes on that list after the non-negotiables, sleep, food, and work, is our kids. Where are we going to spend time with our kids deliberately? The second thing that goes on to that is us. Now, that may have only looked like 30 minutes a day when we started, but we were prioritizing that part of our life on the calendar before we did anything else. Now we can say, okay, now we're going to put 4 hours with the kids, or 4 hours with each other, or go on a trip. But even from the very beginning, you can live the flipped lifestyle. You can choose what you do with that extra time. You can assign your priorities in a way that makes the most important things the most important things, and still accomplish your goals from a business perspective.
And for people who are following along, is there an easy way for someone to like jump in on this? Like, is there like a freebie, or is there a course or someplace someone can join to kind of get this 168-hour map to start this flip lifestyle?
Yes, we do give that away. Actually, it's free on our website, and I can set that up for everybody at flippedlifestyle.com/Robert Plank for all your listeners, and that way they can just go, and we've got a copy of that there, and we actually have a course that goes along with it for time and money strategies when people are starting out, to make sure that they're living their life while building their dreams.
Awesome stuff. So first, figure out that 168 hours, and sort of color in the non-negotiables, the sleep, food, and gotta go to work, and then the kids come, and then what comes after that? Like, what are those next steps that people are supposed to take?
Yeah, the things that if you're just starting out and you want to build a passive income, an online business, or anything, or maybe you're kind of stumbling along and you're falling behind. Oh, I don't have time to write a blog. I don't have time to do this. I don't have time to do that. The next thing is, once you've blocked off times to work on these things, you've got to be able to be super efficient. So one of the things that we discovered early on is, if we would work on one thing at a time and get it done, and batch things, like get a lot of stuff done at once and scheduled, it would free up time later. So we basically invested time so that we'd have more time later, just like you would invest money to have more money later. So basically, an example that might be, okay, we come home. Shane has 2 hours from 9 to 11 to work on the online business. This is Jocelyn's maybe downtime. She just had the kids. She's already worked on the online business. So what I would do is I would say, okay, I'm going to get 6 blog posts written, or 4 podcasts recorded, or whatever content I'm creating, 3 YouTube videos. Get those done. Get them scheduled for a month. Go ahead and schedule the social media post. Get that done. Now, in one day, in a 2 or 3 hour block, I've gotten something finished I don't have to do a blog post next week. I don't have to do one the week after. I can now free up that time to make a new product, or set up some Facebook ads, or do whatever else it takes. So once you only have a limited amount of time, whether it's 10 hours or 2 hours. So you got to figure out what's the biggest bang for your buck within that time, and work on that until it's completed before you work on the next task.
Awesome. So lots of good stuff in there. So focus on just one thing at a time. That way you're not switching gears. Schedule stuff and batch stuff. And so I'm hearing a lot of sort of like it sounds like you guys have a pretty good feel of like when you get tired out or when you need a break. So I'm hearing a lot of like, oh well, like we set aside an hour for one parent to watch the kids while the other one sort of does the other thing or the other one takes a break. Is there any sort of that sort of stuff going on, like sort of knowing your limitations or like knowing that you can make 12 blog posts in a month, or like is there any sort of like that self-awareness going on?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we just have to be constantly aware of when we are burning out and when we need a break. And it's important to have what we call flex time also on your calendar. So that means, maybe you'll work, or if you don't feel like working that day, maybe you'll do something else to take care of yourself. And self care is something that we've actually gotten a little bit better at as of late. I would say there were a few years that we really just worked, and kind of didn't look back. And now, as the kids are getting a little bit older, we're starting to kind of take a deep breath and say, okay, well, maybe we need to go get a massage today
Right.
or,
Yeah.
something like that.
We had a 1 and a 3-year-old when we started our online business. And for anyone who's had a 1 and a 3-year-old, they win when they cry. I mean, you have to go take care of them. You got to feed them. You got to change them. They're not very self-sufficient when they're 1 and 3 years old. So we had to actually work in times that were flexible. Like, well, what if I was scheduled to do some work at 9 o'clock and the kid, got sick, woke up, needed a diaper changed? That would throw off everything. So we would actually plan times in where it was like, okay, we're not going to block anything on Friday night from 9:30 to 10 in case we need a little extra time to make up for work that we missed. It's really important to put that stuff in your calendar, because if you don't, then you're always, something's always going to screw up. It's going to happen. You're going to plan to do something and something's going to happen that you got to deal with. So if you go ahead and plan ahead for that, it kind of alleviates some of that pressure, basically. And even if you just put 30 minutes to yourself in your calendar when you first start doing this, you might say, I've got to grind. I've got to go to a full-time job, come home and work on my business. Well, just take Saturday at 9:30 to read a book for 30 minutes by yourself in a quiet room. Like, even that at the beginning can help you recharge, and it's just a part of your priority list.
Cool. So just like little things. And so as you're sort of explaining this whole like calendar thing or schedule flex time or schedule like, time to make room for those important things, have you guys ever come across like sort of over scheduling? Because I know that like I've come across some people where they'll schedule like, bathroom breaks and things like that to that extreme. And I'm thinking, what if you're 10 minutes late on your bathroom break? Does that mean you don't get a bathroom break? And so I'm sure that you've seen that to some extent. Like some people get super crazy with their systems. I mean, do you have any thoughts on that? Like, is it possible to get sort of like to plan too much?
Well, we don't schedule bathroom breaks because when I was a teacher, man, I couldn't go pee until the bell rang. And I didn't want to get back into that situation again. You know what I mean? So, no, we do not schedule bathroom breaks. But I will say this. Jocelyn is very adamant that everything is on the calendar. Like, all the stuff goes on the calendar.
Yeah, we schedule pretty much everything. So it's if we take our dogs for a walk, it's on the calendar. If we have to drive our children somewhere, that's on the calendar. If we're going to the pool on Thursday, that's on the calendar. So I'm very, very particular about making sure everything's on the calendar, because that way we're always on the same page. So if we're out somewhere and we need to do something, we can just really quickly pull up the calendar and say, okay, well, this day's not good, but we could do this day instead.
And we've got a soft rule in there that says, there is flexibility. If we want to change our calendar, we're open to doing that with the cautionary statement that you got to be careful. You do that too much and all of a sudden you're not on the calendar anymore, right? And what you find is, I'm a real like, feather in the wind kind of guy. I'm just floating, man. So Jocelyn keeps me organized. But when you put things on the calendar, it actually is a lot more freeing, because you can see what you got to do, and that lets you know what to do when you don't have to do anything. So it actually gives you more freedom to schedule this way than if you don't.
That's a really good way of putting it, and that's the sort of thing where like this is slowly dawning on me, especially the last few weeks, is that the whole scheduling stuff on the calendar is sort of paradoxical, because as you're scheduling it, it feels like, oh no, now I'm like losing my freedom in the future. But then in the future, you're like, well, I have freedom because number one, I can rearrange or cancel stuff on the calendar as long as I'm careful about it. But like you said, now if I have free time, I'm like, okay, I know what to focus on. Or if I start my day, I'm like, okay, I know what I have to get done before noon and all that. So it's like it's sort of the weirdest thing where it's like it feels almost like it's less freeing, but then when the time rolls around to do those appointments, it's more freeing because you're like, oh well, now I know exactly what I need to do. And so as far as like adopting this whole calendar stuff, like was there any sort of like growing pains, or was it difficult at first to kind of get from when you guys started to here? Like was there any sort of like transition, or did you just kind of you guys just sort of drop right in?
Well, I think that everyone needs a catalyst usually to make them do something different. And we had a couple really bad experiences at work, where we actually had a school system consolidate, and I lost my job. And then we had another experience with a boss that really woke us up to the fact that we were basically giving our time to everyone else, and we had no control of our life. And that's the problem that most people do, is they're giving away their time. People just don't realize it. At football practice, I would sit at 5 o'clock, practice would be over. All the other coaches would sit around and talk for 2.5 hours. And I would do it too. And it was just sucking I felt free. I'm free to sit here and hang out. But then what I was really doing was they were stealing my time. And when all these negative experiences started happening, we started looking at each other and saying, that is not the best use of our time. We're actually less free by not doing this. So it was an easy decision to transfer to it. So once we started doing that and started really seeing progress, I think it was actually pretty easy.
Makes a lot of sense. So yeah, so it's like before you were standing around and you thought you were free to sort of use your time whatever, but it's like you were free to like to waste your time. And you mentioned at the beginning about how important it is to be resourceful, and I think that's such an important lesson that like I'm still kind of sort of reminding myself of is we always have those ups and downs, right? We have like the ups and downs in money coming in the business, ups and downs as far as like more free time, less free time. And it's like if there's those times when things contract and we like sort of prioritize and know what's important, we can sort of streamline things so that when it expands again, then we can really kind of put the pedal to the metal there. And so you guys mentioned that your kids are getting older as kids do, and I've heard of a few stories of like I know of one person where he like has his daughter create courses, and someone else has he taught his daughter how to like take pictures and sell them on like the image royalty site, and she made some money for that. So do you guys involve your kids in your business, or do they have their own businesses, or sort of any plans like that for you guys and your family?
Of course we do.
Cool.
We wouldn't be very entrepreneurial otherwise, right? No, we actually have started our kids out. They've started out doing a YouTube channel. They watch a lot of YouTube videos, and one of the things that they were really interested in doing was creating their own channel. So we actually have one that's called Flip Lifestyle Kids, and they do a variety of different things. So we do travel videos. They do toy opening videos where they cut things open and things like that. They do video game review videos, all kinds of different things that they like to do. So that's how we've started them out, is just sort of getting on camera, getting comfortable with that part of it. And we definitely have other plans for them in the future as well.
Yeah, I mean, they're 8 and 6 years old, so there's kind of a limit on what you can do with them. But our 6-year-old and our 8-year-old already have a bank account, a checkbook, a debit card, and we're starting to slowly monetize their site with ads and things like that. And right now it's just about when you're trying to get your kids into entrepreneurship, you just have to let them do what they want to do and facilitate that.
And make it fun.
Yeah, make it fun. The problem I find with parents doing this is they try to force them to do, the things they don't like to do. They try to teach them everything they've learned as an adult, Right now, I just want our kids to make time for content. So if they can do that, then as they get older, they'll be able to just expand and do whatever they want. So yeah.
Awesome. I mean, good advice. Like your kid is not a younger clone of you, and if you
Not
want
yet,
if
no.
you want a virtual assistant, then go hire one. Don't try to get that free child labor,
Right,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
Well, cool. And then so then one other thing I was sort of curious about like you guys and your lifestyle is, so how does the whole being married and working from home thing work? Because I know like some people like the spouse, either the man or the woman like just has no interest in working with the business. So I mean, like what do you usually see? Like, is it usually like just like one parent does the business, or do both parents do the business, or like I mean, what are your sort of thoughts on that? Like, is there a correct way, or sort of like what's your advice there?
Well, like a lot of people do that. I mean, that's how a lot of people are. Ours is very 50-50. I mean, we are both entrepreneurs. We're all in this together. And, we have meetings and we have staff meetings and we record our podcast together. And, we're pretty much together like 24/7, basically.
Yeah, and the beautiful thing about our working relationship is that we are both very driven individuals. We're both very forward-thinking people. Great for entrepreneurship. I always say that usually we bring out the best in each other, occasionally the worst. So, there are good days and there are bad, but I mean, most of the time the good outweighs the bad for sure. And I don't think there's anything wrong with one person doing the household stuff and one person doing the business. That's the way most people do it. But for us, it really works well for both of us to be involved.
And we have actually a course in our Flip Your Life community where we talk about one is our goal setting apparatus, where we take people through a process to figure out what they actually want out of life. We actually wrote that from a perspective of a couple, because most of the people that come through are married. And it's not just you want to be a couple working together. It's getting on the same page as a married couple. If you're not on the same page with your spouse, it doesn't matter if they're with you as your partner in business or if they're just with you as your partner in life, you're not going to go in the right direction. So it's really important that any entrepreneur, whether your wife or your husband is your business partner or just your wife or your husband, you still have to dream together. You still got to set goals together. And you still have to be aware that conflict is coming and problems are coming so that you can resolve that. That's how you become successful as a married couple in business, regardless of if you're business partners. You got to be on the same page. So that's what we work on hard a lot is expectations. Are we going the right directions? We were having a discussion just today about we're about to build a deck and a pool and all this stuff back beside our lake. And we were talking about how much money we were going to spend on this and what we were going to do on that. And we had a disagreement, but we have conflict things in place so that we don't kill each other, right? And you have to be prepared for that, even if you're not actually doing the day-to-day business stuff together.
Awesome, good advice. So be on the same page. And so, and we mentioned a few times that you have this community. So can you guys sort of fill us in about this Flip lifestyle, the community, and your website, and just like all kinds of cool places people can check out that are yours?
Yeah, sure. If you want to connect with us, we're very active on Twitter and Instagram, and our handle there is @FlippedLS. And we have a podcast that comes out every single week on iTunes called the Flipped Lifestyle Podcast. And our podcast works a little different, Robert. We don't actually bring on like experts and gurus. We bring on real members of our Flip Your Life community, and we have consulting calls right on the air. And we let everybody listen in each week on our podcast while we help that person get to the next level so that they can pick up tips and tactics that they can apply in their own business too. And the Flip Your Life community is basically a huge community of hundreds of entrepreneurs from all over the world. And we have a program in there called the Flip Your Life Blueprint. And this is like the roadmap, the exact blueprint that we followed to start all of our online businesses. And it's kind of like the thing we wish that we had when we started out. And that's what we teach people on how to set up their online business, get everything going, and get it started. So if you want to learn more about that, you can go to flippedlifestyle.com/flipyourlife. And don't forget, I will set up a free resource for our time management course for all of your listeners at flippedlifestyle.com/Robert Plank.
Awesome. So you guys should all go there, flippedlifestyle.com/Robert Plank. And as we're sort of winding this down, I mean, you mentioned a few times that you made this resource, you made this course as sort of the thing that you wish you'd had starting out. I mean, if you could give yourself or yourselves as a couple back then, like one piece of advice, I mean, what do you wish you guys knew going in?
Really to start with a product first. That's kind of what we tell everybody. There's so much information about there. Most gurus teach people how to get Facebook followers and how to write emails and all these things, but if you ain't selling nothing, you ain't making no money. And that was the huge mistake we made early on until we actually were like, wait a minute, who's the person? Who's the problem? How do we solve it? Now let's make that. That's when we started making money. So that's where we start all of our teaching as a product first mentality. Who are you going to sell something to? What problem are you solving for them, and how are you going to do it? How are you going to get it to them? Once you figure that out, just build a website, put a price tag on it. You'll be good to go.
Awesome. It makes perfect sense. So yeah, if you were learning Facebook ads and you had nothing to drive them to, what's the point? But if you have a product, even if you do a little bit of Facebook ads, at least that's a little something higher than zero. So lots of good stuff today. Lots of good advice just as far as like business and time management and family stuff and marriage stuff. And I hope that everyone out there, if you have an online business, or if you're married, or if you have kids, or all the above, make sure to go back and listen to this episode 2 or 3 times, and make sure to go to flippedlifestyle.com. And I want to thank you both, Jocelyn and Shane, for stopping by and sharing all this really cool stuff with us today. And everyone should go to flippedlifestyle.com. And thanks both of you for stopping by.
Hey, thanks for having us on the show.
Have you had a chance to rate and review the show yet? If not, go right now to robertplank.com/iTunes, click the View in iTunes button, and click the Ratings tab. We would really appreciate a 5-star rating, or whatever you think is fair, plus a quick 1-sentence review to tell us how we're doing. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful day.